Children do not like for their parents to choose who they're going to marry.
Anytime you have two individual people together, you have a recipe for tension.
He was like, I'm only going to get married once.
Only getting married once. There will be more Easters.
Yeah, I looked at him straight in the eye and I was like, I'm not coming to crash your party. I'm going to start my own party.
When we begin to feel or sense that tension, it's our responsibility to remove the tension.
Yeah. Oftentimes parents get so caught up in keeping things the way they are that relationships are injured and they don't even know what they're doing.
As a young couple, we did not even understand the concept of boundaries.
One of the mistakes that it's easy to make is never seeing your child as anything other than your child.
I can't allow my self-worth or my self-esteem be based upon where did they spend
this holiday.
The holiday.
As parents, you raise these children and you love your kids. How do you adapt to loving who they love like they were your own kids? We're back. Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm ready.
We're back. We're ready to tackle another podcast.
Why do you look sad?
I'm not sad. I don't look sad either. You're trying to throw me off.
Your blouse is beautiful.
Thank you.
I think you tried to match me.
I did. Trying to be all fallish. Yeah. So, are you good today? You good?
I'm good. What are we talking about?
Ready to talk?
Yep.
Oh, well, today I think we need to talk about, since we are a podcast about empty nesting and all things revolving empty nesting, we're going to talk about some of the things that tend to creep up in the adventure of empty nesting. So, one of those things is daughters-in-law, sons-in-law.
Okay.
That's one thing we didn't have to worry about when our kids were in 3rd grade.
No.
5th grade.
Well, Peyton, remember in 5th grade,
he thought the Lord had already told him who his
the
wife
only
was
thing
going to
he
be.
wanted for Christmas
was
for us to allow him to have a girlfriend in 5th grade. Do you remember that?
I do. I do. I remember.
Only thing
he wanted us to lift the rule, the ban, if you will, on having a girlfriend.
That's funny. I remember that.
Yeah, her name was Macy. I remember that too.
Wow.
So he just knew it. I was like, son, you're 10. You're 10. I don't want to invalidate your feelings, but again.
But you kind of did.
You're 10.
Yeah.
Like, ain't nobody going to tell you who your wife is at 10. So, yeah. So, yeah, you don't think about those things. You don't have to be concerned about those things until your child grows up, finds the one that they love, and they ride off into the sunset for a happily ever after. So then where does it leave you as parents? How do you navigate that? What do we do?
There's a lot of cliches, right?
Yeah.
We either, did you lose a son or did you gain a daughter?
Oh, one of the things that I hated hearing, you know how I don't know why people do this. Why do we do this as people? We say the dumbest things, like negative things, and try to set up a negative future for people. This is what I heard. People told me this all the time. A daughter is a daughter for the rest of your life, but a son is a son until he takes a wife. Why would you say that to me? Why? I think at this point, I remember I had to make a choice. Am I going to come into agreement with this? Am I going to receive that? Or am I going to just reject that and say, no, I'm not going to, I don't come into agreement with that. That's not even the case with us.
How'd that make you feel?
How'd it
You're
make you
hiding
feel?
it, yeah.
This is therapy. The doctor's in right now. Lance. Dr. Lance.
How'd that make you feel?
Yeah. Just silly things. Silly things that people say, you know. Yeah. I think we have a choice. We're going to either live things out the way that those silly fairy tales or wives' tales, we can take those on or not. And we had a lot of decisions to make. We all live through experiences with your in-laws. You know, some things we grab, some things we don't want to do, you know.
I think a big part of that, don't you think, is with the intention that we had of creating an environment our boys were launching. It was like we had already, to some degree, I think you talked about this in one of the other episodes, emotionally let go.
Yeah.
So if you're not emotionally hanging on, it makes it probably easier, be my guess, easier to let them go and find their mate.
Yeah.
And then begin to build a relationship with the mate. But if we've hung on to that, in this case, a son relationship so tightly that it makes it, I think, harder, well, definitely harder for us to build a relationship with their mate.
Yeah.
But it also puts the son in a really bad spot.
Right.
That, do they leave and cleave? I mean, do they leave home?
Really leave and cleave?
Or are they going to have to be on the fence?
Yeah.
And I think as far as parents of grown children, that's a really bad place to put your kids, is in a position where you're literally making them choose between who raised them the last 18 years and what they're going to be going into the rest of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it's a hard place to be as a kid, as a young married person, if you've got one foot in each world. And
it's an impossible task.
Yeah. You have to leave, and you have to cleave, and there's just no other way to do it. And I believe, since we have boys, I remember believing and thinking there's this place where I had to get to, where I realized at a certain age, there's only room for one woman in a young man's life. Mm-hmm. And with every day that passes, it's less and less me, and it's more and more whoever they're going to marry, especially if you've got a child who they have a long relationship with somebody before they get married.
Unlike us.
Unlike us, we had a short relationship, but our oldest son did things differently.
Yeah.
And I like to take credit for Lindsay. She probably won't like this because she's her own woman, and I love that and I respect that. But I called her, like, I made the mistake. Here's a little bit of advice of what not to do for parents who your children are approaching, dating and finding their forever after. Children do not like for their parents to choose who they're going to marry.
Especially sons don't like their mom.
No.
Yeah.
Because I called it. I knew it.
You did.
The first time I met her, I made the mistake of telling our son, I think you should marry this girl. And he was like, oh, Mom. Like, it just prolonged the experience, and they weren't ready. So they really weren't ready for each other. No. He wasn't mature enough. And so, but they dated a long time. So we knew her before they even started dating. Well,
he's done your hair for how long? She
was my hairdresser for, a long time. So we knew this girl. And so it was wonderful. So, but I think the point here for us is, as parents, we had to let him go. I had to let him go and know that I can't be the mom that's like, what about me? What about me? And I think this goes back to, filling those holes. Like, your children can't fill all the emotional gaps in your life.
No, it's unhealthy to even think that.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, going back to our first one, more times than I can count, you have said, you pointed at Lindsay, you said, that's why we didn't have daughters.
Oh, yes.
Because she
wrapped you up around her little finger, and anything she needed or wanted. First of all, for those of you that don't know, so Lindsay is just a beautiful girl, and she has the sweetest, I can't even talk like her, but it's a really sweet, kind, just a melodic voice that is just, you just look at her and she talks and you think, oh my gosh, how can you be this sweet?
Did she just reprimand me?
Yes.
You wouldn't even notice it.
Yes.
Because she's so sweet.
Anything Lindsay needed, anything Lindsay wanted, like, you were there. And I watched this dynamic and I was like, it's you. It's you. You are the reason. This is why we did not have girls. I couldn't have a girl because she would have been absolutely rotten to the core.
And when you found out our third child was a boy, you got so upset. You
I
just
did not
cried
get
and
upset.
cried.
I cried tears of joy.
Okay.
That's wrong. That was just wrong what you did. No, because they don't know us. People don't know us. I did not cry because
it's a
I
joke.
wanted
Everyone
a girl.
out there, it's a joke. She cried, but it was
That's a throwdown. That's right.
It
You
was
just did.
tears.
That's a throwdown right there.
tears of joy.
Yeah.
But I remember on that third one, this has nothing to do with what you said our topic was, but it was a baby shower, and I had taken in a rose and a letter.
Oh my gosh.
A letter written on blue paper.
Okay, so I'm like
This is why you need to just
ginormous
listen.
and fat and pregnant. Yeah.
But the note, I felt like it was a note that God gave me to write to you, signed Love Peyton.
Yes. Because we already named him.
And it wrecked you.
It wrecked me. It totally wrecked me because it was like, my child wrote me a letter. And in my head, I know this wasn't true.
The child in the womb sent you a message.
Yeah. And I don't know. And this is my own issue, but have you ever wanted to be, you don't care. You don't care what you look like when you cry. I do. Like, I have always wanted to be one of these that if I cry, I'm always amazed at these actresses
Hallmark.
or people.
It's a movie. It's not real.
Who a tear slips gracefully down their cheek and they can still talk while they're emoting. Not me. I mean, my face squishes up into a massive, ugly cry. It was just, so those are the pictures from this baby shower. That's all the pictures that I remember are
And it was
those
like, hey,
pictures
Peyton,
of me.
this is what Mom did when she found out you were a boy.
So that's why there's a joke in the family. That's why. Because it was such an emotional time for me. Anyway.
He's had to have a lot of therapy to get over that
right.
too.
Yeah. I need the therapy right now. But no, loving their spouses, loving
back to
who
back.
they choose, because we don't get to choose who they marry. You know?
True.
How do we navigate the change in a family? Because I remember when we got married, I remember having this moment in a little hotel room in Cassville, Missouri. My mom and my dad and my sister and me, the night before we got married.
Yeah.
And I lost it. I was crying. I was so emotional. And I remember my dad, again, Snoopy, like there's nothing like a dad hug, when your dad puts his arm around you, especially if you're a girl. And he's trying to figure this out. He can't figure out, again, ugly cry. Still wasn't a pretty crier, even when we first got married. I wasn't even pregnant. And he's like, you don't have to go through with this if you think this is a mistake. And that wasn't it. That wasn't what I was crying about. What hit me all at once like a ton of bricks was that I knew this was the last night that our family would ever be a family of four. From that point forward, everything tomorrow was going to change the trajectory of our family because we would be married. It's like I almost knew internally I was leaving them in a sense and cleaving. And so there was a part of me I was grieving for what had been, I know. Do you know what just went through my mind?
Yeah, I did. And I just I'm not repeating that phrase. There's no way on God's green earth. Do you two know what that phrase is? I'll tell you later.
Yeah. Sorry. We might have to, I don't know. I don't even know how to recover from this.
Well, you're not going to go there because this is not a political statement.
What I said that story, I brought that up because
Open loop.
I know. What do I do now? Like, how do I recover from this? It's a political thing. So I don't think we should bring political things into
Oh,
this.
heavens, no.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, let's just pretend it
Anyway,
never happened.
so forever changed.
Forever changed. And so
You're not a family of four anymore. You're now a family of two.
as parents, when that happens to your children, when you're the parent and your child is getting married, there's a sense of, things are going to change. The family dynamics will change to incorporate a young man, a young woman coming into your family. And that's really difficult. And some parents get hung up in that, and that's when the problems start. Because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I will.
I believe that oftentimes parents get so caught up in keeping things the way they are that relationships are injured and they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think if we think even back to ours, we both have great parents, very loving, very kind, but we were not really coached on this transition is going to take place. This is what's going to happen with holidays. That was the biggest one, really, is where do you spend your holidays? Because for the previous, maybe 20, for us, it was 22, 23 years, we had one place that we went on the respective holidays. It was now all of a sudden,
you got to split time.
And what do you do? And, our parents didn't know what they didn't know or didn't know how to coach through it. And so there becomes almost like a tug of war between where do you spend your time? And again, our parents are amazing. We have great parents, but I often felt pulled between where do we go? Because
no parent's going to do it perfectly.
No, and there probably is no perfectly anyway, but I always told the boys when they were starting to work and get into the business world, it's like every leader you have is for your good. You will either learn something you're going to vow to replicate or learn something you're going to vow not to replicate.
Yeah.
Same thing in the personal world. Yeah. It's like, what do we do? What did we learn? The good, the bad, the ugly. What did we learn when we first got married and began, 6 months later, got pregnant. So
I know what you'll remember. Do you remember packing up and hauling?
Oh man!
Not only children,
we had a little white caravan, strollers,
all
playpens,
the things.
All that, and it was hard to travel, but that was kind of the expectation. If I think back all the way to my childhood, the norm was everybody went to grandparents' house. All the kids came in, and so that was the expectation that the kids traveled.
But it was also kind of, I wanted to go because grandparents were going to be there, and they give you a little bit of a break. That the responsibility of the holiday and preparing food and doing all the things is not on you at your house. So there's a little bit of, it's worth us doing all this because they're going to take kids off our hands and we can maybe sleep in,
See, I never once thought that. It's interesting to hear.
Really?
Really?
You didn't?
No. I wanted my parents to see our kids. But you know what? You probably did 90, especially when they were real little.
Yeah.
You probably did 90% of the work too.
Yeah.
So, but my point is now, once our kids started getting married, we were able to intentionally bring some of these in as far as even coaching them of the importance of family, even your new family.
Yes.
You have a point.
No, I want to go back though, because I wasn't done with that whole thought.
Oh, we're going long.
Do you remember getting to the point where we were like, when are we going to stay home and develop our own traditions?
I do remember that.
Because I think that people get to that place. Like we're talking about holidays and sharing and, the expectation not being, you're coming here every year for the rest of your life. And if you don't, there's a problem. Like I don't ever want to be that kind of parent. Like we didn't have parents like that.
Right.
But I think they're out there. There are probably parents out there that, I probably don't want to meet them, but that put that kind of expectation on their kids. And that's a lot of pressure. And it doesn't give kids autonomy to be their own people. But I do remember having that conversation where we decided the kids are old enough, they're getting older, it would be so nice to just spend a luxurious Christmas morning with just us in our home. And then we can go and do or have people over.
Yeah.
And
And so from that point, there's a lot of like there's all different scenarios, but it's like with our kids, it's like the moment Taylor and Lindsay had children, one of the things that they were immediate on is we're going to have Christmas with our kids in our house.
Yeah.
Which we're like, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
So you got Christmas, which is kind of the big one. Thanksgiving, which I don't know when this is coming out, but it's going to be real close to that. We've got a unique scenario this year for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking from an empty nest perspective. I would love to have all the kids here, or at least all of us together, so that it's about relationship. It's about
being
the
together,
love that we have for one another. But at the same time, it's having to be flexible enough that nobody feels guilted into being together or railroaded, or they feel like, well, we have to do something.
Yeah.
It's like the last thing I want is my boys to be here solely because they feel like they had to be here or dad was going to be upset.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
No, nobody does.
Nobody does. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
subconsciously. Do you think people really would
think there are some that it's all about them having their kids there.
Yeah.
I just think it's, for them, it's like, it's the end of the world if they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think some advice for people in the emptiness phase is learning to be flexible. Mm-hmm. You have to be flexible, and realizing that sometimes your holiday is celebrated with your loved ones on a day that's not that actual holiday.
Well, like what we're doing this year.
Well, yeah, because for us, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't care.
Right.
I'm not gonna like, everything does not ride or die on the day of Christmas. If that's 24 hours, and if it comes and it goes, and our Christmas is a day before, a day after, whatever, that's fine. But I think we've had to be flexible.
Just a real quick interruption on that. When you said that, it doesn't have to be on that day. I had a mental picture of cousin Mark, our good cousin Mark Walters, and Valentine's Day. He's just taken a really hard stance. No one's going to tell me to send her a card on Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
it's like,
see, that's sanctified rebellion right there.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it is.
I think that might be a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there is in the printing world, you want to send a T-shirt, what size you want?
I'm not going to say that on air. Nobody needs to know my size. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Excel.
that's the whole point of this is how do you navigate these seasons? I think thinking outside the box, you have to figure out how to think outside the box. There are things that we learn, like you said, good things, good treasures we pull in from our upbringing, and maybe things that aren't going to work for us. And we know that. And sometimes we don't know that until we've lived enough life that we figure it out.
Right.
But one thing that we decided when our boys were young, we had a lot of conversations about things, some good, some bad, some heated, but we talked about a lot of things, is how are we going to handle this? Even though it's down the road some years, it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. You know that it's coming. And so I want to be ready for this, and I want to decide now what kind of in-laws we're going to be, what kind of parents we're going to be. How are we going to, I don't want to fight over holidays. I remember looking at you in the eye and being like, I don't feel like we are the kind of parents that we're going to fight with our daughters-in-law's parents.
I really do. I remember that conversation. You looked me in the eye and you had this one little tear that gently rolled down.
Yes. Yeah. And I was able to talk through it.
Yeah.
And it didn't ruin my makeup.
Yeah. It was a beautiful
beautiful moment. That's right. It was a Hallmark moment.
It was.
But yeah, I think deciding those things beforehand clearly is good. But what if you haven't decided beforehand? What if you're in the middle of it and there's tension in your family? How do you release that tension as a parent now?
Well, one of the things that you've always said, I love it, is we're the parent. it starts with us. We cannot expect our children, even though they're grown, as you say, they're grown-ass men, we can't expect them.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you do. You've got a lot of unique words that T-shirt level words type. Anyway, you've often said, though, that it is our responsibility to be the parent. Yeah. And I think what you mean by that is we're older, supposedly have more wisdom, definitely have more experience. So it only makes sense that when we begin to feel or sense that tension, it's our responsibility to remove the tension.
Yeah.
I mean, it's entirely up to us.
Yeah.
We can either feed it or we can snuff it out based upon our choice of words or our actions.
Our expectation.
Showing grace.
Yes.
Right? So, like this year, it's a unique year, and we're not all going to be able to be together on Thanksgiving Day. Extenuating circumstances with extended family, not our own core.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. We're going to all be together the day after.
And I get to make 2 Cajun fried turkeys instead of 1.
Yeah. In butter.
Oh, Cajun fried butter. I'm good at Cajun fried turkeys, y'all.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. You're the turkey daddy. Huh? That's right. Y'all are welcome. You're welcome.
When we lived in Shreveport, Louisiana, we were introduced to a Cajun fried turkey.
Oh, yeah.
And
we were introduced to a lot of food, a lot of good food in Louisiana.
A lot of good food in Louisiana, but we've never made any other way than that. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that
helps too. When you have really good food, the boys want to be there. Food and fire. Remember we talked about that earlier. Yeah. Food and fire, you got a conversation.
Do you have examples of tension?
Hey guys, thanks for letting me interrupt real quick. I want to talk to you about this book. It's an incredible resource to create an intentional legacy. It's called The Legacy Navigator. Came out earlier this year. It is chock full of exercises, real life examples, and in the appendix in the back, it's a literal blueprint to help you create an intentional legacy. Many people talk about whether they're going to have a legacy or not. I promise you, you will. It's either the default one, the one that you just created by accident, or it's one that you created intentionally. The intentional legacy is vastly different from one that you just settle for. So I want to encourage you to take a look at the book. There's a QR code that you can scan. It's on Audible. It's on Amazon. I'd love for you to check it out. So the question was, do we have an example of tension, a real life example of what we walked through or dealt with to get rid of the tension?
Not necessarily us, but I know people, and I know stories of people who, their families don't share well, and even though somebody's married in, nothing changes. The expectations of those parents don't change, and it makes it super awkward and tense, and there's bitterness from the other family or from the kids, and that's just not a way to spend a holiday.
For me, example, tension is literally available at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, it is.
It could be at any point, anytime you have 2 individual people together, you have a recipe for tension, right? Just from my opinion. I think one thing that will drastically help is the ability to have a conversation, to be able to communicate. Got tons of examples of what maybe could have been tension, but I think we were even talking the other day, it's like we haven't had a whole lot of drama that we've had to deal with because our boys were completely raised to have communication skills, to be able to communicate. I remember one, I've got 2 at top of mind, but one, when we decided we were going to move to Nashville, Taylor was feeling a little pressure, a little tension that mom and dad were now moving into his town. And he actually set you down.
No, we were all at Starbucks.
Well, I don't know that I was there.
I think you were there.
Well, then I blocked it out because it was so traumatic.
It wasn't traumatic. It was just, he's just like you, Lance. He's
a good boy.
He's a good boy. He's such a good kid, such a good man. But he's very to the point. He does not mince words. And I think I knew a little bit about how they were going to process our move because honestly, you wanted to move before I wanted to move. This is a little off topic, but yeah, because I was concerned. It's a scary thing when you move and you're in your 50s. I'm like, oh my gosh, we spend all of this time building friendships. Now we're going to move, and I'm all about moving for my kids because sometimes our kids didn't know what they didn't know. we knew
They had an opinion on
that
it.
that they're going to want grandparents nearby, you know. But I was like, how are we gonna? It's gonna take so long to develop deep friendships. And the Lord told me, He was like, you need to go because you're gonna build deep friendships so much
Quickly.
faster than you ever have in your life. And I kid you not, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So when he's like, I'm sorry.
Are you?
I'm
No?
explaining the story because he said at Starbucks, Mom, kind of like this, oh, sweet mom.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart, but I'm going to break your heart right now. So get ready. He's like, I don't want you to think that you're moving to Nashville. Then all of a sudden we're going to have
Sunday
every
lunches again.
Sunday lunch after church. And like, he was like, we have our own friends. We've developed a life here. And I remember I looked at him straight in the eye and I was like, I'm not coming to crash your party. I'm going to start my own party.
Yeah.
And
So,
literally,
as an example, though, that would have
did
been
it.
an example of if we didn't have this culture of communication, that could have been something that was festering under the surface and it would have blown up at a very inopportune time and we would have had no real understanding why.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So another recent one was when our youngest got married this May. Y'all know Peyton. And it was the bachelor party, which was so cool. I got invited to, which I thought was really cool.
It's kind of a sometimes people think it's a bummer to invite your own dad to your bachelor party.
Yeah.
Not only were you invited, but his father-in-law
His father-in-law was invited. But he had it set on a date. And then a month out from the date, they moved it back a week and it was going to go cover Easter weekend. And I told him, I said, well, that's Easter weekend. Let me get with Mom, make sure everything's okay. I didn't think anything of it. A few days later, he called and said, can we talk? In one of those tones, it's like, okay, this is a serious talk. And he goes, yeah, do you remember you said you're going to have to think about it? And I said, yeah. He goes, it really kind of put a bummer on my whole day because I really want you there. And that sent a really bad message. And he's not sensitive. It's not like you hurt my feelings. But it hurt his feelings to the point where it bothered him. And had he not been comfortable calling me to have that conversation, again, that would have been something that could have festered and created an unwarranted or unneeded tension.
And what did he tell you about? Because he even told you the reason it kind of bothered him. He was like, I'm only going to get married once.
Only getting married once. There will be more Easters.
Yeah.
Which made me think of Nacho Libre, about more Easters.
Oh.
But anyway.
Let's don't go there. But
Does that help as far as examples of tension? Now, if you want to talk tension here, oh, son, we could take the next week on that one.
Go ahead.
I think I'll pass.
Yeah. You opened it up. Take it on, buddy. Take it on. Yeah. Oh, tension? Gosh, there's a lot of tension sometimes that happens behind the scenes because
the longer we've been married, the less those opportunities come. But in the early days, early years, most of it was out of my ignorance and selfishness. So
I think
and her sanctified rebellion. So,
I think one of the other things, even on this list with, like holidays, special occasions, one before we go there, one of the other things that I want to say that I feel like that I've had to let go of is now that there's women in the family besides me, like I've had to let go and let them host.
Oh yeah.
Because there are these daughters of mine love to cook. They like to host. And if I were the kind of mom or mother-in-law
so stuck in a tradition.
that I hang on to, no, it has to be my house and these foods. And like we've welcomed in what traditions that they bring in from their families. And they both are beautiful hostesses and just love to do that. So that's one thing that I think that if you are a parent, that you can let your kids take the lead in that if they want.
Right.
Like when Lindsay was pregnant and she just couldn't, having a toddler at home, pregnant with Harrison, like we had Christmas was it last Christmas? We had it here.
Yeah.
And our house is significantly smaller, but I don't mind doing that. Nobody cares because the point is we're all together.
Yeah.
But they have the freedom to host and be the hostess as they want.
Yeah.
But you're talking about some of the tension, I think is a result of us not having healthy boundaries. We had to learn how to draw healthy boundaries around our family for our extended family.
Mm-hmm.
And our kids have to figure that out. They have to draw boundaries around their families from the extent. And we're not talking just parents, but siblings too,
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of tension in the early years because we didn't realize we needed boundaries.
Didn't understand the concept. And yeah, you're exactly right. So that again, what we were able to learn from the early years, we were able to replicate, encourage, train up. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity. But I think, like we've said so many times, so much of the tension that could be there is negated or mitigated by just having a conversation. And then we've talked before, just because you have a conversation, make sure that it's a safe place and that defensiveness doesn't flare. Right?
I think if you become defensive, you got to deal with your own defensiveness.
Yeah, but that's like a blind spot or a deceptive position, because if you're defensive, majority of the time you don't realize that.
I know if I'm defensive most of the time. Don't you? Can't
I know
you
when
tell?
you're defensive.
No, what I'm saying is if something happens, I know most of the time. I think I have other blind spots. I have a lot of blind spots, but I can feel the need to defend or the need to say, wait. I don't know. You're looking at me like that's a blind spot, and I don't know that it is. So,
Okay.
well, what do you? You just kind of moved on with that one. What do you think about? What about people who are raised with the thought or the idea that boundary, the word boundary, is like a dirty word? Like, 'cause some people just don't. They don't like the word boundary. They don't want to set boundaries. Like, they don't have a healthy view of what a boundary is. Don't you think boundaries are super important?
Yes. And I'm blanking on the title of a particular book by Bruce Wilkinson, but in his book he called it border bullies.
Border bullies. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep.
We had the book. If you think of the name, pull it up. But
I'll Google it.
okay. The whole premises though of border bully was you have somebody in your life that based on their fear, they're trying to place it on you. And when you have a vision for what you want to do with your life, you want to start a business, you want to start a new role, you want to start a family, you want to get married, the people, usually the closest people in your life, your mom, your dad, your siblings, whatever, and he calls them border bullies because they're fearful on your behalf. They are afraid of you starting a new business because they don't want to see you fail. So they put their fear onto you. And so that's where, when you are crystal clear on what you want to say yes to, it makes it incredibly easy to say no to anything that could be a distraction, that could get you off track or off target. Did you find the book?
Is it The Road Less Traveled?
No.
Okay. Well, then no, I didn't find it.
So we'll look it up later. But
Dream Giver.
That's
it.
Yep. So the book, The Dream Giver, it's a really easy book. It's an allegory. You could read it in a weekend, but it's so good on recognizing that just because someone else's fear that's in your circle doesn't have to be your fear. And if you don't put up healthy boundaries around that, you begin to absorb everyone else's fear. And so understanding that, back to the boundaries are a very healthy thing. And there's been a lot of studies that when you have children and you have them in a boundary, they feel safer. They're able to live to their fullest, even as children. But if you put a kid out in the yard with no boundary on it, they're fearful, right? So boundaries are designed to protect, to encourage, to build up. So as a young couple, we did not even understand the concept of boundaries.
But we didn't grow up in families that we were stifled and the life was squeezed out of us by excessive boundaries.
No.
And that's probably why we weren't scared of boundaries. We just didn't know.
Right. So can you think of any of our acquaintances or anybody that we've kind of walked through horror stories or boundaries, anything that you can think of that you've experienced or tried to help someone else walk through?
I know that there are people who experience, like maybe they've got a child who has gotten married, and that both kids gravitate to this other family to the extent that they've kind of cut the maybe the parents out of their lives. And
that would be hard.
That would be really hard. And I don't know all the reasons for that, obviously, because I think every situation is different, but I know that sometimes that happens. And I think those are opportunities to, again, if you're not very self-aware, you're not always going to see that if you're the one that caused the problem, then how do you bring solutions into the midst of that? Because honestly, I tend to run from people that suck the energy out of me. I don't want to be an energy sucker for my kids, for my friends, for my family. I mean, that's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah.
But I know that sometimes there are energy suckers and they don't realize that they're energy suckers. And that's, I think, having community around you, people who are able to climb over your wall and say, you need to take a look in the mirror, or you need to think about, this, or maybe sometimes things happen initially when a kid gets married and a family can't let go, all sorts of reasons. And then do you think those kids are going to want to be around you if you are, if there's a tug of war between me as a mom, like I'll just put me, if I'm the mom that I'm hanging on to my son and I cannot let him go. And so my daughter-in-law is always feeling like she has to
compete.
Yeah, compete. Yeah. Well, goodness, that's, I can't imagine they're going to want to grab the kids and come home every holiday and see us, because that's not going to be a fun thing. I'm putting her in a really bad spot. I'm actually putting my son in a bad situation, and I'm not helping to foster. And so, there's all kinds of stories like that.
And the other thing too is, for me, on that right there, thinking if we were in the scenario where, for whatever reason, we come up on holiday and any of the sons, they go to the other family, I have to understand my relationship with them is not dependent on where did they spend the holiday.
Yeah.
I have to be okay with that. And that's a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a level of
maturity. Like your identity is
confidence,
not in,
in that my relationship with my son is solid.
Yeah.
And whether they're here with me on the holiday or not, there's a reason why they're not there.
Yeah.
But I cannot allow, again, we've talked about this before, I can't allow my self-worth or my self-esteem be based upon where did they spend the holiday, or where did they spend most of the holidays.
Well,
right?
Case in point, with our oldest son and his wife, Lindsay, we lived in the same town with them the whole time they've been married. And her parents have lived away until recently. And so for Christmas time, ever since they've been married, like they spend Christmas with her parents, because I had to recognize, I see you all throughout the year. They don't have that opportunity. So for me, I didn't feel slighted in the least. I felt like this is only fair.
Right.
Like for you to do a big holiday.
But you could have gotten your feelings hurt.
I could have.
Which would then have created the tension that, the question that came up earlier.
But we just chose a different day to do our family Christmas together. And then as each of the kids married and the family, other extended family comes into the picture, it's just worked itself out. So So boundaries. I think boundaries is a big key, and being able to draw, like we try to be respectful. Like I let my kids know if we're coming over, we just don't show up and I know the code to open their garage door. We don't just show up and barge in their house.
Right.
I feel like one of the mistakes that it's easy to make is never seeing your child as anything other than your child. We've had to step back and look at our kids as grown men, the leaders of families. Like I think it establishes a level of friendship. I would never come to your house and just walk right on in. I would never go to our friends and just walk right in. You know, you go to the door, you ring the doorbell. They usually know you're coming, that kind of thing. And if you can't treat your kids, your grown children, like friends, then I think that's a little bit of a mistake. Is there a familiarity there? Deeper familiarity? Yes, always. But I think that's a good viewpoint to remember. To
respect their independence. Because that's what the whole thing all along was, creating self-sufficient, independent, quality humans, right? So you got to respect that. Here's
another thing that I think parents struggle with, because as parents, you raise these children and you love your kids. How do you adapt to loving who they love? Like letting that love grow to where you love them both like they were your own kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's tough.
It can be, because like you mentioned more than once, you think you did with Taylor, but you do not pick their mate.
No.
You do not pick who they spend the rest of their time with.
Yeah.
So it's like somewhere along the way, we had to decide, love all of our kids and their mates, but we had to make a decision to accept their choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if that's who they choose, they're part of the family. And just as one of God's creatures, they warrant being treated well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and when you love your kids, don't you love who your kids love?
Well, yeah.
I do remember just personal stories of, when the boys would date someone, especially me as a girl, like they would start dating someone and I would fall in love too. But if they would break up, I felt like I had to break up.
Yeah.
Like that was hard.
More than once.
That was hard transition. So it's not hard for me to love who they love. I think what's interesting for me is, I've had to grow through this, but like we mentioned, our daughter-in-law, Lindsay, is a hairdresser. And so for years I've sat in Lindsay's chair and, we just talk about everything under the sun. And so when they got married, she would still talk about everything under the sun. And I love it. I love that she will talk to me about, not overly personal things. Like it's appropriate.
Okay.
So Taylor, don't worry, it's appropriate. But I believe the ability to communicate with Lindsay on a woman to woman level, to be able to change hats for me and get out of mother of Taylor, because if I don't, I might be a little like, here's an example. So, when you get married, like Taylor and Lindsay got married, they'd never lived together before, and they go on their honeymoon. Well, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. You don't understand. You're not used to sleeping with somebody else. Like you've slept by yourself for how long? And so, somebody might snore or somebody might be a mouth breather. You don't know this until you get married. And I think that, it was hard for Lindsay to adjust to sleeping with someone in the same bed. And in her sweet little voice, one time at a hair appointment, she was like, and she says this jokingly, but she's like, Al, there are some times that I just need to put a pillow over his face so I can sleep. Well, if I didn't have that, I know her, first of all, but if I had that easily offended, oh, you're talking about my son, how dare, that's so mean, like, no, woman to woman, I hear you. You need some sleep. This is a rough transition for you. I get this, It's just little things like that, I think, if we had, like when Kate gets married, it would be like, whoever she marries, can you talk to them as a grandfather, man to man, and not be like, oh my gosh, you're talking about my granddaughter. I think there's an element of learning to identify with the other person.
I'm already mad at the guy. I didn't even met him yet. Now
And
I'm
you're
already mad at him.
Well, she's got a while to go. She's little. So,
Wow.
but yeah, like learning to love your child's spouse, is a big deal.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing.
Whether you like it, agree with it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's a fun time. But I realize not everybody has, great
again,
memories.
we got to be careful. What I think you're relating into is not everybody has that. But now, how many people live in the comparison game?
Yeah.
I mean, when like on holidays and weekends or holidays and special events, we'll see people at church, then all of their kids are there at church with them.
Yeah.
Or
We don't go to church with our kids.
Or Father's Day, they're there. Or Mother's Day, they're coming to town. And so it'd be real easy to begin to think there's something wrong with my family, or my kids don't want to be around me because look at so-and-so's parents, or their kids are all here.
Yeah.
So comparison is never accurate.
Yeah.
And it's also a very dangerous, slippery slope. So again, don't play the comparison game.
And regardless of how you feel about a daughter-in-law, son-in-law, I think it's important to keep in mind that's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's son, because it's easy to, if you get frustrated with things. And I feel like, honestly, we drew really good straws. Like we do not have issues with the people that our kids married in that regard.
They're good people.
They're good people. They're so easy to be around. They're kind. I'm so grateful. I'm really grateful, but I also have sympathy for people who aren't in that position, because I think a lot of people are treated unfairly, or they, it's easy as I remember a lot of parents did this when our kids were little. Like if you're the kind of parent that think my child could do no wrong, that's kind of a dangerous place to be. And as kids grow, sometimes that carries on into adulthood, which sets their spouse up to fail, because then if that child could do no wrong, then their spouse is always going to come up short. And so that's a tough place to be. And I think that, we talk about, living a Christian life. The Bible's full of loving people. How do you love people? Like that is a commandment, to love people
and not just in word, right?
Not just in
you can
word.
say one thing and act totally different. So the acting and the talking has to align.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So what else do you think comes up with people in?
Don't know.
Oh, you do know.
Oh, I do. So if I did know, what I would say is
grandbabies. What do you do when grandchildren come into the mix?
you buy them more gifts than the other grandparents, so you're favored.
What? Wow. What have we just been talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, grandkids are awesome.
They are awesome.
They're absolutely awesome. And, I want them to have an amazing relationship with us. I want them to have an amazing relationship with the other side of the family.
Yeah.
So, again, the competing and comparing, there's nothing healthy in familial relationships with competing.
No.
I'm very competitive in everything else, but it's in that area.
No. Because it doesn't do anybody any good.
No.
Well, I think one of the things that I see is I didn't want to be a grandparent who, one of the terms that I do not like, and this might get me in trouble, is it's a grandparent's prerogative. I don't like that.
Why would that get you in trouble?
I think it gets me in trouble with people. I don't know. People have opinions.
So
I have an
what? Now
opinion.
what?
And since I'm stating my opinion, I'll tell you why I don't like it. Because I feel like it's a little disrespectful. I believe that my time with grandchildren, I want it to be different than their being with their parents, obviously. I want to be fun. I'm not with grandbabies day in and day out. I don't shoulder the burden of raising them like we did our own children. So I love that I can enjoy everything about them and stop and really notice and listen and have fun. But the grandparents' prerogative I'm talking about are the ones who come in and they're like, it doesn't matter what these parents feed their kids, they're going to hype them up on sugar because they can. Because they, I don't know, whatever. I just think I've read stories of people who like the parents are just in fits because they're like, oh my gosh, every time I turn my kids loose to the grandparents, like they get away with everything. And then they come home and we have to retrain and reacclimate and reboot to, no, this is not grandparent Disneyland. This is everyday life. And so that's the part of the grandparent prerogative that I feel like I think is a little disrespectful. Yeah, so I think being self-aware enough as a grandparent to watch and know, you know, what are the main things that I need to be aware of that I also come in line with. Otherwise, my grandkids they're gonna eat my lunch. They're gonna mop the floor with me because they're kids. They're smart, you know.
You're a pushover.
I can be a pushover with
for them, yeah,
because they're so stinking cute.
Yeah, they are.
Yes. So, and one of them's a girl. So, yeah.
I hadn't heard of grandparents' prerogative.
You haven't?
I have not.
Have you all heard of that? Yeah, you have? Yeah. Yeah.
I have not.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
I'd
and it
trust
causes a lot of problems in
I can
families.
see where it would.
You know? So, yeah. Because there's things, it's funny because this is where I think that the whole grandparent game, like kids benefit from the differences in families and caretakers and people in the family because like I bring something different to the table than Kate's auntie and her other grandparents. I'm not an artsy, let's get the paint out and get dirty and do this. And I can barely draw stick people. Like I've never been an artsy person, but they do all the arty things. And so I think there's a well-rounded way to look at, you know, babies need all family members to pour into their lives. And I think that's where the real win happens for everyone involved. So, but yeah, grandchildren, that can be hard. What about, you know, I think there's parents too who, because they don't have great relationships with empty nest children, they barely see grandbabies. Or not just with problems in the family, but maybe they live far away.
Distance.
Yeah. And I think the modern day hacks of FaceTime, like the technological aspect, like
what you got my parents that frame.
Oh, we did.
Got them the frame so they could be more a part because they'd love to be a part of them, but they're so far away.
Yeah. And they're not able to travel.
Yeah. So that technology is really.
So shout out for Aura frames. And I had to set that up, but your mom is obsessed with that. And your sisters. So it's just a digital picture frame that we got her.
And we can upload them from here.
Yeah. And it uploads on their system just immediately like that. And so it just pictures wrap around and she'll notice that there's new pictures.
There's a new picture. She'll send a text. I saw the pictures you uploaded 2 days ago.
Like they couldn't come for Peyton and Kaylee's wedding. And so that was really hard for them. And so I was uploading pictures in real time to the Aura frame because it's another point of connection digitally for people. Yeah. So for parents who live far away, you know, I just always knew, I remember telling you, if we don't live in the same town as grandbabies, you have to make enough money to fly us.
You there. I remember you saying that.
Or get me there somehow so I can be part of their lives. So I feel like we have hit the jackpot in the in-laws area. And even our kids' spouses' families, we get along great with them. Like I love every one of them. They're very different, but they're a lot of fun and just amazing people.
Yeah.
But yeah. What other things did we have to turn the corner on when it came to our kids getting married, growing older?
Well, even right now, even though we're within an hour of all of them, we don't see them a lot.
Yeah.
There's folks that's like, oh, so nice. It is nice that we live close to them, but we don't see them that often, really. I mean, It was weird last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever I went to Miami, all three of the boys were there. So it's like I flew to Miami for a conference.
And one of your girls was there.
And one of my daughter-in-laws.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay.
Yeah.
Flew to Miami to see my kids.
Everybody was there.
Yeah.
Me and Lindsay were holding down the fort here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just, proximity is always one of those challenges, whether you're in the same city or across the nation. It's just going to be different because now that they're grown and adults, you don't always get to just dictate, oh, let's go to lunch. I'm going to take you to lunch day. Well, they may not be available or even in the same city.
Here's something that I hear a lot of people say is that they maybe sit in kind of a sad sack place, like a poor me, because I don't talk to my kids very much, but I don't text them or call them often because I don't want to interrupt them. I don't want to bother them. What do you say to parents who...
Phone works both ways.
Yeah.
Texting works both ways. Yeah. Well, that's what we went back to earlier. It doesn't matter how old our boys get. They will always appreciate being pursued. I said by dad, but they're going to be they'll appreciate being pursued by either one of us.
Yeah.
Those are our boys. And I would submit that any family that, if you're waiting for someone else to move, you might be waiting a long time. I would encourage you to send a text, leave a voicemail, send an audio message, and, in this case, sometimes our boys respond fairly quickly. Sometimes they don't respond at all. And I could get offended by that. I could call them out. But what does that do when I get upset with them and I call them out on, you didn't respond to that text? The youngest one, I'll just throw him under the bus real quick, texted him on Sunday. He responded on Wednesday night or Thursday. And I gave him a sarcastic response. I said, praise the Lord, you're still alive.
Oh, Lance?
Yeah. And guess what? He didn't respond to that. So just, from our point, from our empty nest parent to another, it's like, just pursue.
Yeah.
Just do what you can do to pursue the relationship. And do not be offended when they don't respond quickly or don't respond at all. To your point earlier, if they don't respond, are you going to withhold telling them about them, encouraging them, speaking life into them? No, that makes no sense.
No.
So just continue to pursue relationship.
Here's another thing that just hit my head as you were talking. We've talked about on other episodes about how raising our kids, more things are caught than taught. Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't raise the people that our kids marry. So how long is it going to take? Like we can say certain things, but it takes a while to back up those things. It takes a while for them to catch on that we mean what we say. If I tell you this is who I am, they're going to stand back and they're going to wait until I have a chance to prove it. And I think we should let that play out. We should be willing to, I think, who our kids marry, they have to have a chance to know that about us, and that takes time. Mm-hmm. Lindsay got to know us over a long haul. Yeah, the other two haven't.
Even we did that legacy workshop, middle of September, And, someone asked Kaylee.
Well, ask both of them, Devin and Kaylee.
But Kaylee was responding, and she said, well, at first was kind of annoying. As far
That we
as
talked a lot?
that there was constant communication. If there was questions that he would pursue to get an answer, or that they would do intentional planning, like the first Friday type stuff. She said initially it was annoying because that wasn't the way she was raised. And she comes from a great home, but she said it's taken a while, but now she was like, I like it. So it has taken, like to your point, it takes time.
It does.
Because Lindsay is the one been around the longest, 12 years married. No, 12 years around us.
They got married in what, 13 or 14? 13. 11 years married. So longer.
So 14 years we've known her.
11 years coming up this spring. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're good with math, y'all. Yeah. But she's been around the longest.
Yeah.
And Kaylee's been around the least.
And Devin's been around longer than Kaylee's been around.
So it's one of those things that it takes time, and building relationship it's either going to be caught or taught, or it can be highly intentional. Like we talked about again. When your walk and your talk align, growth can happen significantly faster.
So give those kids time to get to know you and build trust.
Yeah. The other thing, I don't know if this is how we would end, but one of our good friends, Mr. Aaron Sanders, great dad, very intentional dad.
Yeah.
But I remember after he read the book, he said one of the wake up calls for him was his parenting did not end when they moved out.
Yeah.
He was so intentional getting them up to 18 or to 22, or one went to the military. He's like, my role as a dad doesn't ever end.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that it was something he didn't know, that he was, even at a subconscious level, he's always going to be dad. He's always going to be influencing. But it's like, even though they're moved out of the house, his role is still highly intentional. And so that's, I love that was one of the takeaways from the intentional side of the book, because it's about, the subtitle is creating an intentional multi-generational impact.
Yeah.
And so that was a good positive feedback for all of us as parents, no matter how old we are.
Yeah.
Our role does not go away.
Yeah.
It changes, but it doesn't even diminish.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. So I think realizing you're still in process. We're still in process, things can change. And I
they
think,
will.
Yeah.
And they will.
They will. And having hope for that to change. And so I think sometimes you have to do the work. You just have to do the work.
You always have to do the work.
For it to change. So, yeah.
Anything that comes easy, don't trust it, right?
Yeah, that's true. What do you think?
Any questions from?
I have a question for Allison.
Yes.
So I looked up this study in a 2021 survey.
Yeah.
75% of mother-in-laws said that they were satisfied with their relationship with their daughter-in-law. Only 40% of daughter-in-laws said the same thing about their relationship with their
Wow.
Over 50% of mother-in-laws said they strongly trust their daughter-in-law, while only 18% of daughter-in-laws said they strongly trust their mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So clearly there's a mismatch of expectations.
Polarization.
And so I'm curious from I think Lindsay might be a more of an anomaly. So we'll use Kaylee as an example. What have you done to tactically build that relationship with her, build trust with her, invest into her as a human, but then also in that unique relationship of mother-in-law daughter?
Yeah. Well, I think that first of all, not hanging on to my son and being the kind of mother that, if my son is launched, and has a life of his own and doesn't have to ask me. I don't go to his house and clean his house before they were married. I didn't cook all of his meals. There are parents that still happens, believe it or not. And that sounds like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? But it does. I think that's the first thing, is making sure that I don't have an unhealthy attachment in my claws in my son. But I will never turn down an opportunity to spend time with her. She's invited me. We went before the wedding to a winery and we spent the day together. We've gone shopping together.
wedding dress shopping.
I got to go wedding dress shopping with her. Like, so she's brought me into, like, I am never going to say no to that. So I think that you can be around someone, and it's obvious if you are letting them be who they are, and not tearing them down.
If I can interject real quick, I think that is an amazingly good principle, is find a way to say yes, especially to your adult children, because it wasn't convenient to drive all the way out to where they were.
They live an hour away.
But it was so worth it. It's like, Peyton has invited me out to play golf. Well, golf is 4 hours. It's an hour out there. But you figure out the yes is worth it. I had never had a cigar or a bourbon, and
Until your boys introduced
Taylor
you to you.
invited me up, and I'm like, I remember telling you, I don't want to go. And you're like, if your adult son invites you to go do something, you better figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's a no-brainer now. It's like, why would we not figure out a way to say yes?
Yeah.
If and when your adult children invite you to do anything.
Well, and here's another thing that I've tried to keep in mind. What did I need? What did I need at that age when we were dating,
Great
we
question.
were just starting our families? So if I can think in terms of what I needed and maybe help provide, because she hosted Christmas last year. Like, it was a Pinterest Christmas, literally.
She
Like,
did
I don't know how
amazing.
she does it. Well, I am not going to be the mother-in-law that comes in and reroutes
Critiques
everything.
Anything.
Like, I'm going to serve and find out, how can I help you? How can I come alongside you? How can I build you up? Because this is amazing. I can't do this, I think a woman who's wise, it's like I talked on a previous podcast about in Proverbs where it says, a wise woman, and hear
not
me,
tear
I
down.
don't do things perfectly, but
I'm
in
not
my
saying I'm not
mind,
perfect.
I'm not saying I'm not perfect. I want to be a wise woman who builds her house. I don't want to tear it down with my own hands. And it is not right for me to come in and take over another woman's kitchen. I don't care if I've been around. I don't care if I'm Betty Crocker. That's disrespectful. And so coming into their home and being a guest in their home, but somebody who can uphold and serve. It's the same with Taylor and Lindsay or Logan and Devin. Like, I'm going to find areas that I can.
It's another
come
great
alongside.
principle, though. If we're there or when we're around, wait to be invited to do certain things. Because I'm very comfortable around the grill, I could easily just take over. But it's like, if they invite you out and they want to grill steaks or they want to do something, I'm not even going to get near the thing. That is something that they want to do to serve us. And it's, in a way, it's a way to serve them by not getting in their way or not taking over.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think who wants to be that mother-in-law? I don't. I desperately didn't want to be a mother-in-law because I had friends who had monster-in-law. I watched the movie. I am very well acquainted with J-Lo and her monster-in-law. I saw these things, and those are little wake-up calls, knowing when my boys were little, wait, am I going to be the monster-in-law? Like, I could easily have the propensity to do that, but I don't want to because I don't want to miss out. I want to be a part of their lives, and yeah, so we all have a choice. So what else?
I'm done.
What? You're done? You're done talking.
Yeah, you've carried it pretty well.
Wow. I'm too much, aren't I?
You're
Is that
a
what
lot.
I'm hearing?
You're a lot.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we're done. We'll see you next time. We out. Goodness.
Wow.